And my special guest today is Derek Taylor. He's a grill master and barbecue enthusiast, a barbecue competitor, but he's also president of this really interesting company. It's called Smoky Woods BBQ. And I thought it was so pertinent, especially because it's summertime and everybody's got their grill out. Not like everybody really all knows how to grill. So um, I thought it'd be great to have Derek on because he's going to give us some pointers also and tell us about this great company, Smoky Woods Barbecue. Derek, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Maria, for having me. I'm so excited to be your guest today.
Oh, yes. So tell us, I was telling you before we got started, I was so impressed. I was reading about you and about the company. So I guess let's go back to the beginning because I know
Yeah.
you're a person that's really passionate about grilling, and that's how you started your company. So how did you get started in grilling?
Yeah, no, that is a great question. So I grew up in Texas,
Uh-huh.
and so a lot of people would just assume that maybe it's in my blood, but it was much later. It probably around when I was about 25 years old or so.
Uh-huh.
My dad, his brother, so my uncle and I, we would do, and one of my brothers, we would do an annual barbecue competition, just one a year. Really kind of backyard barbecue cooks, and that's what started to get me interested in it. Is seeing that there's this whole world of competitive food and competitions around barbecue. And so I did that with them. And then shortly after that first competition I did with them, I decided to buy a ceramic style cooker, a big green egg specifically is
Oh,
what I
yes.
bought. And
Uh-huh.
I just started to learn and cook and make mistakes and try
Uh-huh.
try to get better, and really kind of fell in love with it from that point in time. And then I moved to Wisconsin. My wife's from Wisconsin, so I moved here. And when I first moved here, I really didn't know anybody in Wisconsin, and so I saw that there was a local barbecue competition. And so I decided to enter the competition, my first one on my own, and really as a way to kind of meet people. I wanted to sort of just see who I could connect with and meet
Great
at this
idea.
barbecue
Yes.
competition, and
Huh?
that's kind of what got me going down the path now that I'm in now.
Wow. And how did you decide to start this company, Smoky Woods Barbecue?
Yeah, so great. So I was as I was cooking and competing, one of the things that I started to notice was how much the wood fuels, so charcoal and wood chunk and chip
Huh?
and stick products like that, how much it impacts your cook based on if it's a quality product versus if it's not as quality, or if it has too much moisture in it versus having the right. And so I started to realize like it really matters, and it makes your cook more predictable. And so, I got the opportunity to start this company, Smoky Woods, to make our own wood products. So we
Great.
make all of chunk, chip, stick, charcoal, and pellets. So
Right.
really, kind of everything you would need, no matter what kind of cooker you have. And
Right.
really, the focus and goal of that was to make quality products that are going to perform the same way every single time you cook. To be able to control what you can control, because it's hard enough as it is to pull off an outdoor cook, and it helps to have good wood products.
Exactly. So I thought it was so interesting because I know a lot of people that are really into grilling, they're always looking for these chips with pecan or apple. So you have a lot of those, right? You have pecan chips, and so they impart an aroma to the food that you cook with, right?
They really do. You can tell a difference between what species of wood you're cooking with and how that impacts the flavor of the food. And
Uh-huh.
so we have really all of the main kind of barbecue wood species that you would want to see. We have apple, pecan, hickory, oak, post oak, cherry. We also have blends,
Uh-huh.
different, and so we have an ultimate blend that has maple, hickory, and cherry all kind of blended together. And we have
Right.
the same thing in pellets. We have a couple different blends in the pellets as well. And so yeah, it really does. You can notice a difference. And if you're cooking a steak, maybe you want to use a mesquite, a hardwood
Huh?
for something like that, as opposed to if you're doing pork or chicken, you want to maybe do a lighter smoke, something like an apple or maybe a cherry or a pecan, something, a fruit wood, that to
Right.
help give it a different flavor profile. So it really does make a difference.
Oh, well, yes. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. There are some, like I said, that do know, and they're always telling me they're looking for the chips with a different, scents to them, aromas to them, but not everybody
Mhm.
realizes it, and it does make a difference. So, yeah, I would definitely recommend if anyone wants to, I guess, amp up their grilling and really get into it to try some of the flavors that you have at Smoky Woods BBQ. Um, so I guess some of the things I wanted to ask you too, and it sounds like the one thing I wanted to say is you got into that company because you knew it was really important, the quality of the wood, right, that you use. And it sounds like you wanted to give that to everybody else, give them the possibility of using the higher quality wood. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I knew it was important, and I had learned that over about 10 years of cooking and competing, and also doing some catering
Uh-huh.
jobs around the Wisconsin area where I am. And so I wanted other people to just know if they're buying our product, the Smoky Woods product, they're going to get a precision cut, kiln dried product that's going to work the right way every time.
Exactly. So tell us, I wanted to give people some tips on grilling and wanted to ask you I had some questions I put together. I thought these would really
Yeah.
help people that are grilling. So tell us, are there any like common mistakes that people tend to make when they're grilling and how do you think they can avoid them?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. One of the funny sayings, but it's true, is and if you're looking, you're not cooking, is the
Ah,
saying. And so if you're doing, especially this is true with your smoking. So if you're doing an offset cook that takes longer, I mean, the more you have that top of the grill open, or the top of that smoker, or the top of that pellet smoker open,
uh,
it's not holding in the temperature, and it's going to reduce the temperature of the grill, and it's going to impact the cook. So if you're looking, you're not cooking. So what I say is, if you're doing a longer cook, just trust, as long as you're managing your fire. And if you're cooking on a pellet smoker, that's easier these days because they have kind of a digital temperature reading, and many times you can even program these things through your phone with a
right.
Bluetooth connection. But if you're cooking even on like a Weber cooker, or a ceramic style cooker like a Big Green Egg or something like that, let the food cook, and just check it, intermittently. If it's a longer cook, if you're doing a pulled pork or a brisket,
Huh?
don't check it too often. That's one thing I think is important. Another is, I think, having a good meat probe, a temperature probe
Oh,
of some
yes.
sort. And
Hmm.
there's a lot of different models out there, and different ones that are great, but it really helps to be able to quickly check the temperature, see where you are, and then close the grill again and let it continue its cook. So that's a big tool I would recommend using, is finding a good quick read meat thermometer.
Okay, great. And I just want to mention too, we kept talking about your products. People can find them at smokywoodsbbq.com, right? That's the website for people to find
Absolutely.
them. So do you have any I guess favorite grilling techniques for different types of meat? Is there any kind of that you can share with us?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think on any of like your so we'll say sort of your steakhouse stars. So like
Uh,
a steak or a pork chop. I prefer direct heat on that,
right.
meaning charcoal with some wood chips or chunks in there to create that smoke flavor, and doing it directly over direct heat. And you can do those quickly. You can, just like you do burgers or hot dogs, you can do a quick cook on those, where maybe you're keeping it a minute aside and you're rotating it until it's done.
Uh,
That's how I prefer to do those sorts of proteins. If you're and same thing with vegetables, you can put asparagus or broccoli or even potatoes on a direct heat like that, and really get some nice char. Let it develop that crust, not where you're burning it, but to develop a little bit of a crust and a char flavor to it. That's a great way to do that.
Mhm.
If you're doing one of the bigger meats, a bigger protein like a whole
Right.
chicken or a brisket or a pulled pork, a pork butt, or ribs, I prefer offset. So more smoking than direct heat grilling. And so you can set your cooker up, whatever kind of cooker you have at home, to do an offset smoke for a longer period of time. So you're looking at 3 to 10 hours, depending on what the protein is and how long that takes. But the reason for that is you don't want to, those bigger meats can have a tendency to dry out and to get not as tender if you're cooking them too direct, too fast, too hot. Whereas if you're going to let them smoke over a longer period of time, it's going to help the fibers in that meat break down and render the fat in that meat, so that you get a really nice, juicy, tender finished product at the end of that cook.
Oh, that's great. So I just want to mention again that we're talking to Derek Taylor, Grillmaster, and he's sharing some tips with us for grilling. So Derek, the other thing I want to ask, I thought I saw on your website, do you have some barbecue sauce or marinades or something? You do.
I
So
do, yeah.
I was just going to ask you, do you have a favorite rub or marinade for grilling? So maybe you can tell us about that. I'm sure it's something that you had your hand in, so that you developed, so because you're so
I did,
passionate
yeah.
about grilling.
I think a lot of people at home will appreciate this too. So I came up with the recipes for. We have two rubs or dry rubs. One is a kind of salt, pepper, garlic blend, and we call that the come and smoke it rub. And then we also have the up north all-purpose rub, which is your kind of classic all-purpose rub. And both of these recipes, my wife and I created during COVID when we were all kind of locked down and at home, we had to find something to pass the time. So we started experimenting and buying different spices and blending them together to come up with a signature rub. And we ended up coming up with that all-purpose rub first, and then we came later to do the beef rub, the Texas beef rub I mentioned. And
Uh-huh.
so we have both of those on our website, as well as we came up with a recipe for our sauce, which we call the Midwest made barbecue sauce. And
Uh-huh.
ours is a vinegar based sauce. So it's a thin sauce, similar to what you'd expect out of kind of a Kansas City style barbecue sauce.
Uh-huh.
Great sauce, complements really anything really well.
Uh-huh.
So those are the three that we offer. So I love using our products, of course, and what we do. I also think if you like spicier foods or finishes, there's
Right.
some great jalapeno glazes out there on the market as well.
Oh, that sounds
Different
interesting.
ones you can get, but one of the ones I like a lot is called Big Wicks. It's a mesquite smoked jalapeno glaze, and they actually use our mesquite wood products in their process of smoking the jalapenos for their glaze, and so that's another great one to use.
Oh, that's great. And again, you can find the sauces and stuff that he spoke about first. You can find them at smokywoodsbbq.com. So I wanted to ask you, do you have any favorite sides to serve with grilled meats that you would recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. I love potatoes, and I love doing kind of slicing the potatoes and grilling those with salt and pepper. Keep it simple. I think that's a great way, and never be afraid of butter. I mean, butter is a great complement to anything, and it helps
Uh-huh.
create some extra fat there through the cooking process to help things from drying out or burning too quickly. I also love to do grilled asparagus or grilled Brussels sprouts,
Right.
where you heat, get a little char on there. And by the way, one of the tips is if you're doing something and you get the right level of char, but maybe they're not quite as tender yet as you'd like them to be on the vegetables or the meat for that matter, you can put them in foil, wrap them in aluminum foil, and create an indirect cook there where it's not going to continue to char the vegetable or the meat, but it'll still allow it to cook to that right tenderness, that good snap on the asparagus or the broccoli that you want.
Oh, that's great. And that was going to be my next question about grilling vegetables. How do you suggest? But I love that you said simple, keep it simple, because that's definitely the best way. Because if you have all, the different sauces on the meat, you kind of want that, I think, to be like the star of the show, of the plate. And then you have the side dishes, but they're kind of, simple, so they're not going to overpower the the wonderful sauces that you or flavors that you have with the meats. So I guess so once you've done the grilling, how, and this is not, I think this is probably the least favorite part of everybody, including myself, of the grilling. How, any tips on keeping your grill in top shape and keeping it clean?
Absolutely. It's so important to any
Yes.
cooking, whether indoor or outdoor, to have a good, clean cooking surface. What I like to do is while the grill is still hot, I
Uh-huh.
use a non-wire bristle scrubber. So the wire bristle scrubbers, while they do a good job,
Right.
there are a lot of reports you can read about this where those bristles can break off and end up in your food, and people have ingested these, and
Oh
it's
my
caused
goodness.
major
Wow.
internal injuries, and people have had to get
Yes.
emergency surgery. It happens more frequently than I think people realize. So I prefer a non-wire bristle
Non-wire
cleaner.
bristles.
There's different ones out there, and just really soap and water,
Uh-huh.
and a hot grill is going to clean really, really well. If you're using that, you can also use, you can take a, if you've used aluminum foil in your cook, you can take that aluminum foil and kind of ball it up and even use that to help clean that cooking surface. That'll do a great job as well. So, but the key is while it's hot, you want to try to, so put some other protective gloves, whether you have kind of, there's different styles out there of, pit mitt type gloves, or
Yes.
even like welding gloves. I know a lot of people will go buy a pair of welding gloves and
Uh-huh.
use that so that you're not burning yourself, but make sure you're doing it while the grill's still hot.
That's great. All good tips. And I like that tip. Not that I like, but I'm glad you gave everyone a heads up about the wire bristled
Mm.
brush because that is really, really important. So we've been talking to Derek Taylor, Grillmaster, and he is the owner of Smoky Woods BBQ.com. You need to go there if you're grilling this summer or anytime. You definitely want to try out these products and bump up your grilling. Derek, do you have any last words or any anecdotes or anything you'd like to share with the audience before we go?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one thing, the reason I love cooking, and this is true indoor or outdoor, but there's something about cooking that brings people together, and outdoor cooking and creating the space and then being able to invite your family or your friends over. I mean, it's hard to think of a time where you've been doing outdoor cooking, haven't had a great time or a great memory. And it's such a, there's so much memories that are created around a fire. And so I just encourage people to experiment with outdoor cooking and with live fire cooking, and the memories that'll help create. The other thing too is don't be afraid to make mistakes, and I'll give one anecdote.
Uh-huh.
Early on, that I mentioned that we did a barbecue competition. My first one I had done on my own here in Wisconsin, and
Right.
and that barbecue competition, it was kind of a mess. I had an old smoker that didn't work very well, and I
Uh-huh.
I had a tent that kind of came down in the middle of the night, and I didn't end up having any sleep, and it was hot outside, and so the bad part was the next day, most of the things that I turned in were a disaster.
Uh,
But one of the things we turned in was a pulled pork entry into the competition, and we got a call, meaning we were placed in the top 10 in that particular entry. We got eighth place in pulled pork, and it
wow.
hooked me. And
Yeah,
so that's what,
yeah.
you
It
know,
gave you hope. But that's a great story. It shows you have to just get out there and try it. And that was really a learning experience, right? Because I'm sure all that stuff that happened, it was a learning experience. And that's what you take it as. And you move on, you go to the next one and you try to improve what you did. But hey, you were even in eighth place. So that was great after all that.
right.
Well,
It gave me a small silver lining to that
E-
cook. Like, okay,
Ex
there's something here at the end
exactly.
of
There's
this.
something there. That's great. Derek, thank you so much for all those tips. And again, you can find all these wonderful products if you want to bump up your grilling for this summer. We still have some time left. And even if I think we might have an Indian summer too. So some of the fall, you'll be able to grill also. And check out smokywoodsbbq.com for some great products. Derek, thank you so much for being here and all those tips. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, Mary. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Come along with me and discover where food meets art, travel, and life.